Welcome back to the Landcare in Action stream of the National Landcare Conference 2021. My name is Andrew Scott, Bushcare Officer for North Sydney Council. This session is titled The Gully, a story of community resilience and wellbeing. I would like to ask the audience to ask questions during the presentation rather than at the end, because we're likely to run out of time to address those questions. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our guest presenter, David King, the Gully traditional owner. Take it away, David.
Thanks, Andrew. So I'm assuming now I'm on air. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, I should have put one of the Gully traditional owners. It sounds very singular. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Around about 20 minutes just to share a bit of the story of our journey as the Garguree Swampcare group up at Gudumba in Katoomba. Firstly, I'd really like to pay my respects to the elders past and present and acknowledge their continued connection to country for thousands of years. I'm in lockdown sitting up at home, so I'm up at home on Gundungurra country, and wherever you're sitting across this wonderful nation, I pay my respects to those elders and those that are there with us today and still caring and looking after country. So I'm David King. I'm a Gully traditional owner. I'm a Garguree Swampcare volunteer. Tend to sort of go around and just try and look after the group and talk about our connection to the wonderful place that I'm going to share with you this afternoon. I'm a good chance of running out of time. I trust myself greatly. So what I've done is I've put a bit of a thank you up first. And that way, when I get to the end, I just make sure I've covered everybody. Auntie Sharon, Auntie Merle, Uncle Ron, my traditional custodians. I just want to thank them for really fighting the battle to get this site back. Garhai, my daughters, my partner, my family, my community, BMCC, especially Bushcare, our volunteers, Greater Sydney Landcare. Greater Sydney Landcare. I've got a little note in the background said, move my microphone off my scarf. There we go. Greater Sydney Landcare, Landcare New South Wales, Landcare Australia, the co-op who've looked after us, local land services, OEH, used to be called Parks, and our Blue Mountains community and everybody else that I couldn't fit on this slide. Thank you. In my language, Yadangji, thank you for everything you've done for Garguree Swampcare. I'm under the impression this will also be recorded and shared later. So here's a few sites you can go to hear the story that's been going on this site as a Swampcare group for 10 years. So we have Bringing Back the Sweet Water on YouTube when we first started. There was a visit from my mate, Costa, Gardening Australia, and we did a little segment, and then Landcare Australia came out and filmed one of our days on country. So if you want to have a look at a bit more of the story, feel free to have a look at those. So Garguree, the Gully, was an Aboriginal campsite for thousands of years. This image here is one of what we would have seen, and then it all changed. So for us as traditional custodians, this is where my family sat and cared for country, moved about Gundungurra country, and came back here, and it was always strong. In the late 1800s, a lot of Gundungurra people had been displaced. My grandfather being one of them, from the Burragorang Valley, then out of the Megalong Valley, and in the end, they set up the Gully, what we call the Aboriginal place now. And sometimes you'll hear these places called missions. So this was South Katoomba Mission. There's a lot of the Aboriginal community in here. So across Australia, you'll hear that story of people that were based at missions, because when they were removed or displaced, they ended up in these sort of campsites across Australia. My granddad is in the middle there of these four fellas. He was Essie Cooper. I never got to meet him, But one day my mum said to me that she's in this photo, and I never realised the little Aboriginal girl up the back of this photo around about 1930 is my mum. These were some of the shacks that were in the gully. Everyone always asked me, how come all these fellas are wearing suits? One of my aunties once told me to fit into society and to not get displaced again, they tried to make sure that they didn't look any different. So they were a pretty stylish bunch of fellas, hey, especially my granddad there in the middle. My mum, she was born in the Gully in 1926. We, as a community, knew her as Auntie Mary King. And in 1934, this picture shows you just before she was removed. It's a photo that was taken of a lot of Aboriginal kids as they put them in the newspapers. They basically were going to farm them out as domestics. So my mum was standing here, but thankfully my family stepped in, and at my grandmother's funeral, they took my mum to a safe place in Katoomba. She was never allowed to reconnect officially with her family in the Gully, but yeah, that was my mum when she was about 8. Then what happened in 1957, as we tend to drive towards economics rather than humans and environment, they bulldozed the Gully and put this racetrack in. So you just imagine in your mind, there's a thriving community, a swamp down there in the middle, heading out to some rainforest, heading to some open woodland. So you've got some beautiful environment here. It was just filled in, bulldozed, and a racetrack was done. And all the Aboriginal community were just basically sent packing. In 2002, the traditional custodians fought for this spot. Sometimes we don't get too caught up in this whole special sacred site thing, but honestly, when you walk on the Gully in Katoomba, you will find it is a very special place. They fought for it. It was handed back. We then went through a period of how do we bring back this country to what we were used to seeing. I was a fella doing some bush care down at Hazelbrook, where I currently live. My lovely auntie Sharon rang me and said, David, if we get up onto the Gully, we can bring back this country. We can bring back your mum's place of birth. We can reconnect our family and then tell the story to the broader community. So in 2011, we started Swampcare, and there was a lot of weeds, even though that's a beautiful Garguree sitting right next to my lovely head there. Yeah, we basically started to work. So this is a rough image of the Gully. At the top of your screen, that's where we basically work. The Gully covers a 90 hectares area. It goes down through the middle section, which we call McRae's Paddock, right down to the bottom of this screen. You'll see that that's around the cricket field. We call it Maple Grove Reserve. And then the green patch right down the bottom is where you hit into Blue Mountains National Park. A bit more of a perspective of where we sit in Katoomba is, my picture is covering my, there we go. I just moved myself to the other side of the screen. On the right-hand side of this beautiful picture of Katoomba, there's a little blue swimming pool and a little green line. So you've got Katoomba Main Street in the middle. The Gully runs from the bottom right-hand corner out into Katoomba Falls and then out into the Jamison Valley, heading towards Mount Solitary. So the Gully is quite close to town. It is impacted by a lot of runoff. It is impacted by a lot of development. But the beauty of it is that slowly but surely we're seeing that area to the right-hand side of your screen get restored. It's pretty high up the old Katoomba Township when you look at it from this image, but that's just a beautiful picture of Gundungra country. That's why we love getting on the country, hey? It's just sensational. Now I've got to bring my picture back on this side. So I sat down with the traditional custodians in 2011. I used a few of these words at a few other Landcare talks, so those people who might have listened before, you might have seen this slide. I sat down with the traditional custodians and I said to them, okay, what's our plan of management? We've all had to sit there and fill in paperwork. And basically they said, oh, David, we just want to make sure we can get back on and connect that culture. We want to get that community back down here. This is a community place. We want to see people connected, reconnected, a sense of belonging on country. Now, for all of us here who are Landcare, Bushcare, Swampcare, whatever care we do, I wasn't doing too well in my mind on my plan of management. Hey, these weren't the words I was looking for. I was looking for how do I get rid of my Catania-Aston, my blackberry, my privet. They said, David, get a good cup of tea. So I got a cup of tea here today. So yeah, just connecting at Garguree with my Blue Mountains Bushcare cup. Get some food, get a few campfires. My question was, what about the regen? I've got a lot of weeds here. But that was their drive. Their drive was to start bringing back community. And again, the Aboriginal elders were so spot on. We started to sit down, we had some fires, we had a cup of tea, we started to connect, and then we started seeing country come back. We started looking at it in a way of how to not take things off country. So, the Aboriginal elders said to me, Dave, when you get some of these things, how do you reuse it? How can we use it on country? How can we bring back country? So we started to get our volunteers. We started to get different areas of the community, Blue Mountain City Council, to help us to restore this area. So we looked at the use of the plants that were there and the reuse of the plants. We even used willows to basically set up our first part of the swamp. We let it die out for a year, but we looked at ways we could actually care for country as well as those weeds that we sometimes try and destroy. So we then sat down and we started to share the story with our community and other groups. So we have community days up there. We get a lot of our community that comes along that doesn't belong to Swampcare. And then we also have our regular group, which is always a good number. So we quite often get about 40 to 50 volunteers each month for the 3 hours. And it's a bit of a struggle for our bushcare officer because we've got to look at footprint and how we can actually restore different elements of country. But we always get a very good crowd. And based on those elements that the elders told me to go for, we firstly find that people connect, and then their ability to start getting out there and planting, weeding, watering, like to such an extent that during the week we just get contacted, especially during this time, like, can we take your bins out for you? Or can we do this? Or Dave, there's something going wrong down. It's been a brilliant journey of reconnection of the Aboriginal community as well as the broader community. It hasn't been easy, but the stories and the change came. People somehow got into a bit of a habit. This lovely young lady painted my head for a portrait thing, and it's quite a big picture. Let me tell you, she did donate it to me. It freaks me out a bit when I go into the art room. It's like, wow, this is me, and I'm very, very large. A few people said to me, Dave, what was wrong? Like, the artist walked me around the gully and basically said to me, oh, where should we do this image? And I actually got to stand on it near a tree where my mum said to me, son, I can't go this last 200 meters as a kid because I wasn't allowed to sit with my dad anymore because I was removed. And it's been beautiful for me to be able to reconnect with my mum's past and then see strength come out of it through this swamp care group. And then everything else that's then come out of swamp care with the Gully traditional owners. I just have a fantastic group of elders and cousins and family and community that sit with me. That's my mum there. She's passed away now. She came along, got herself a bushcare hat. I don't know if she pulled a weed, but she got a hat. She was always in for a free hat and a cup of tea. But she began to share her stories with me. Hey, I put the cloudy little one because not all of them were easy for me to handle. A lot of them made me look at myself, but in the end, my mum felt like it was home again. She got a Swampcare shirt, I think, off the Swampcare crew. And yeah, she used to come down with her little push cart or walker thing and just sit there, have a feed, have a cup of tea, and just yarn. But she felt like she was back home. It then helped me when I sat around those campfires and I saw the bush coming back. I saw the pathways that were being recreated, and I started to feel connected to this site. I then got to connect and reconnect with my family. So that's my mum there on the left. You can see where I get my fantastic dress style from, She left me this beanie, I reckon, from the 70s when she passed away. I don't know whoever makes these beanies, and then when I went down to do the Gardening Australia one, good old Costa, who's been absolutely sensational, I wore this beanie. And I remember the producer saying to me, "Do you reckon that guy's going to wear that? And do you think it's cultural?" And thankfully, Costa went, "No, he's not going to wear it, and it's not cultural." So we survived the filming day. So you can see my mum's style. There's Auntie Sharon. We didn't know each other much, but she's just been rock solid. And there's me sort of talking a bit again. And this is a part of the middle swamp area, which if you come down now is sensational. I got to connect with family, and I got to connect to this site, and we have seen some brilliant results. That Monbretia there behind us has predominantly disappeared. Where those sleepers are, all around there has regrown. It is sensational. So Garguree Swampcare, through that decision, has allowed us to reconnect, not just with our community, but with everybody else. Somewhere along the way, I got this nickname of Dingo Darbo due to the fact I love a cup of tea. So Darbo apparently in Gundungurra is tea, and Dingo, you tend to like to isolate. And I think sometimes that's what we tend to do. Like, I'm pretty good alone, but I found with swamp care and the land care and the bush care and with our community that you no longer feel isolated. And I think especially in these times, it is so nice to have groups like land care, swamp care, and bush care. Um, I I have enjoyed this journey immensely. I have met some sensational people. I have some brilliant mentors in the Aboriginal community, in the Landcare community, and I really look forward to this site in Garguree just getting stronger and stronger as time goes on. In my language, Gulumbanyan Gindunga Maranu. I'm a Gindunga man. My granddad comes from the Burragurang, Emu country. My mum was born on the Gadumba, Lyrebird country. Our songline goes through to the Megalong, the Bush Tucker country, down there where the lyrebirds and the emus walk. Yadangi, in my language, thank you. Thank you for listening to our little bit of our story. I hope that in your communities across Australia that you can find time to maybe look for special sites or old mission grounds or old campgrounds, and we can emulate and recreate this story everywhere. I have really been blessed, and I've learned a lot about country. I've learned a lot about my stories. I've learned a lot about Bush Tucker. I've really had a sensational time, and I've been able to connect. So, yeah, thank you. That's about it for me today. I actually did it in time for once. Thanks, Andrew. Hope everyone bought a cup of tea with them.
Oh, thanks, David. What a fantastic presentation. It's really amusing. You had me in stitches there. I was making sure. I was a bit worried I mightn't have had my mute on and be interrupting your talk. Would you mind stopping the presentation now, and we'll just move on to question and answers? And gee, we have a lot.
Okay.
So
I'm really. I know how to do that.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sorry to everyone that we won't be able to get through all the comments and the questions because there are just too many. Probably the most I've seen it, all the presentations. There's quite a few call outs there. There's one from Avram. I don't know if I pronounced this right, but Youngdung D. David.
Yadangi, that's
watching
it.
from
Yadangi.
beautiful Gandangara country.
Thank you. I think Auntie Sharon's on. I think she's making sure I'm doing a good job. So my call out's to Auntie Sharon. I think Jane, our bush care lady's on. I think Kelsey, my daughter, could be on. Bella's on. There's a lot of people. Bella's family. a lot of our volunteers, I just love your support. I was as nervous but the community just get around you, which is thanks, Andrew.
Yeah,
Thanks, Ren.
you've got there's Eva said, I've been waiting for your presentation all day, David, from Allendale, Blackheath, Gundungurra country.
Yeah, so Allendale donated us some trees. There's a Greater Sydney Landcare Network project, which is creating canopies. So across my old stomping ground as a kid, they've given us some trees. They had some leftovers. That's what our community is all about, isn't it? Our Landcare community shares. And yeah, hopefully we'll get a Landcare hub up soon. That's a bit of a plug for our next funding request.
Hey, we've got yeah, love that cover. Bill Piggott, he says, can you give us any tips on how to help involve traditional custodians in our land care activities as we share opportunities to curate country? Any tips?
Yeah, I definitely can. Normally in your community, there's always someone a bit like me that's looking to connect. I actually, Bill's invited me around to his place and his lovely wife, and we've had a cup of tea on the front porch, as you do, with some good cakes. And I've pulled Lantana down there. You've just got to really source that person in town that's really passionate. It's sometimes hard to do, but just tell Bill I actually know somebody down there. So maybe we can get a little bit of a journey started, and I can camp out on 7 Mile Beach at the old tip like I used to as a kid for free. Another plug, good. Free camping.
There's a related question, Eva Johnson. David, how can you involve our traditional owners on Annandale Swampcare, Gundungurra country?
Wow, this is like one of those plug
You've started
days,
something here.
So the good thing is, I think that Zwayla, who spoke yesterday from Greater Sydney Landcare Network, is and everybody at Greater Sydney Landcare Network is doing a brilliant job to start that journey. They've contacted me about starting a Landcare hub at Allendale, and I think that, yeah, with the right people in community, with the right desires, you can recreate these connections like what I've seen happen in the Gully. So I think we have great contacts in Landcare. You know, we have some brilliant people. I get very humbled to sit here on this screen knowing who's out there, because you're all sensational. I better stop because I've actually gone on time for once. Go, Andrew.
I just want to just a couple more comments, because this is Chris Yates. I recall doing some weed removal and regen in the Gully area with students from Katoomba High School between 2003, 2010. Are they still involved? I'm teaching now at a school in Wallan land.
Oh,
right.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
So you're influencing people, obviously.
So tell Chris that the good thing is that Birrabin Landcare, so Birrabin is the Gundungurra word for emu. Birrabin Landcare is currently at Katoomba High, and as far as I'm aware, it's still functioning. As far as I'm aware, it's also at some of the public schools. So we have seen Landcare sites come off the early work of the schools. Arnie Sharon and my cousin Jim and many others are working with multiple schools, as well as myself across the mountains, as well as our bush care officer. So we have a lot of school involvement. So that 1 hour, that once a month, 3 hours has generated a lot of school connections. So yeah, there are a lot of schools coming up, but thankfully Katoomba has created their own site. So down the back corner, we have a beautiful little campfire area, and the lyrebird walked on there. I have a photo when the lyrebird came back to country, which was one of our goals, because it's the moiety or totem or skin. So tell Chris we're doing well.
Oh, great. David, just personally, I've visited your site with our volunteers from North Sydney Council via Blue Mountains Bushland team. I think you've got a really good relationship with them these days.
Yes. Oh, they're brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, and Jane sends that email around every month. Come and help pull out weeds in Katoomba instead of North Sydney.
I feel sorry for poor Jane. Every time we do one of these, she just gets, I think our last workday before COVID hit in, we had 55 people. And I think she had some love for me as she walked past with her wheelbarrow. We just, it's just, honestly, once you've been there, you just want to go there all the time. And every time we get to talk it up, she gets more people on that mailing list. But feel free, like we just said in the talk, let's look to start this across the country. Let's look. There are sites where there's been brokenness and there needs to be reconnection. And I think we are the people that can do it. And I just think this story needs to be emulated. Even my personal involvement's massive, but it's just a sensational story. So thanks everyone. Thanks for all the comments. Thanks for having us. Thanks to Landcare Australia for getting through on this one. Hey, it's been a pretty interesting journey for them. Somehow we pulled it off and it's been great. So thank you.
That's fantastic, David. Well, we'll bid you good day. Thanks for for sharing.
Have a cup of tea.
And I'd love to see that beanie on you sometime.
Don't forget to wear a good beanie whenever you go out with Costa, and we can get a bit of beard envy going on. Okay, see you, everybody.
All right, everyone. We are now going to move on to the plenary section. There's so if you move out of this presentation and move to the plenary session, and that will be the end of the proceedings for the conference. I'll see you all there. Bye.